So happy Friday, everyone. Happy Fresh Friday. We're so excited to welcome Gabriel Carter to present for today's slot. And he will be speaking on creativity as a sense of spirituality and design as a method of maturity. Gabriel's a creative director, marketing strategist, visual designer, writer, and poet based in Baltimore. He's served as a design coach for 3 years in Maryland Institute College of Art's annual Design Fest, and his written work appears in an anthology, Campfire Poets, Reverie, Literary Magazine. Also is the founder of a digital brand design studio and currently the communications manager at a Baltimore nonprofit called Parks and People. So, Gabriel, I will kick it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Creativity as a sense of spirituality, design as a method for maturity. All too often, people do not consider options. They do not pause to reflect on alternatives. They simply take the script provided by the genes and then act in accordance. This is a quote by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he's this Hungarian American psychologist who developed the school of thought around flow, the flow state of being. State that flow is the focus of the entire being in harmonious energy. This is me as a child, and you can tell that I have that harmonious energy. I'm the big cheeky smile. I'm enjoying life. And this is how we want to stay with the big smiles on our face. But unfortunately for me, I was diagnosed with alopecia at the age of 8. And alopecia is an autoimmune disorder that attacks your hair follicles and caused me to lose my hair and deal with a lot of bullies growing up. It made me deal with constantly feeling uncomfortable in my skin and kind of shrinking myself in order to find and reconnect with that harmonious energy. I became out of whack. So I got creative though, and I began to play around with style and design solutions to help me protect my peace throughout high school, throughout college. But even though I was doing these things, I was wearing this beanie literally all the time. I was wearing it so much that it became one of my first brand iterations. And eventually, even I was at college and I had a teacher run up to me and was like, I saw your Facebook icon. It looks just like you. And I was known on campus as the kid in the beanie who designed everything from SGA graphics to the fashion show graphics. And I wore this beanie often, but when there was a breeze, when little things happened, I would still feel this sinking sense of anxiety that, oh no, what if I'm exposed? I still felt uncomfortable. I kept carrying this weight of trying to exist in the world as myself. And ultimately, I got to this place where I decided that I needed to focus on being comfortable both in and out of the beanie. Am I the same person? What are the values? How can I grow and expand? Because the way that I was feeling, the negative self talk that I dealt with almost every single day was not sustainable. Ultimately, this journey of creativity and expression led to me being featured on Red Table Talk and writing a book about my alopecia experience, talking about being uncomfortable in my skin, and reaching this moment where I was completely burnt out. This was right around COVID's time, and I was falling out of love with both my career as a designer and also just falling out of love with life in general. Um, so I believe creativity is this openness to possibility. I believe that taking the idea that life would be constantly the same, there's no cure for alopecia. So I always saw it as almost this life sentence. And it wasn't until I made the conscious decision to observe my life and say, what if I moved in another direction? What if I thought differently about how I showed up in my skin and how I felt about myself? Um, it wasn't until I decided to creatively open up the opportunities to what life could look like when I was easier on myself, um, that I was able to design a process for moving forward in loving myself as well as expressing and connecting with others. Dr. Maya Spencer, she wrote this amazing paper on spirituality. And she talks about how spirituality is the practices that aid us in rising and expanding. So we have creativity on one end, this openness to possibility. And then we have spirituality, the practices that aid us in the rising and expanding. And these two are intrinsically linked. So the ability to connect with others and to ourselves, this ability to open also creates a more spiritual, well-rounded individual. And you might have heard of Dieter Rams, who created the 10 principles of good design, who basically said good design is a combination of functionality, aesthetics, user experience, and ultimately it solves problems. It questions, is the present moment working for you? And I had to question, was the constant pressure I was putting on myself, my experience with alopecia, my experience with designing a life well lived, was it currently working for me at that time? This is one of my favorite books, The Hermit Story. And this is one of my favorite quotes from that book. Who will rescue us if not ourselves? Who will emancipate us if not ourselves? So the question is, what happens when you're constantly in a cycle of inaction, burned out, poor execution as a designer? These are the things that I was feeling in my life. And I was definitely hitting that level of burnout. There was a tiredness in my body that could not go away. Even with rest, it was still there. I was falling in and out of love with the things that I thought that I once loved and would carry me throughout my life as a designer. So I decided to address the issue. At one point in my career, I thought I was going to be a product designer, and I was able to land a few interviews with this company, Fearless, in Baltimore. And they have a process when they're working on a new project where they ask a how might we question. How might we design a better UI or UX for a certain product? So I like to ask you the same question here. How might you design a better experience when it comes to living the life that you feel you are capable of? Well, I designed a whole process for it. And this process was built throughout the years of going through therapy and talking with friends and seeing both inwardly myself, but also the different cycles and patterns that exist around us all. And if you notice, this system of growth connects directly to design thinking. I hadn't heard of design thinking at the time. I was just going through a process of recognizing where there was tension in my life and coming to a space of clarity where I was understanding what would it look like to move into a place with a little bit more ease in my life. And of course, as a designer, I couldn't just leave it at words on a page. I had to create posters. And this process is about recognizing where there's tension in your life, moving to a commitment of action. And I think a lot of people struggle with number two. So I don't know if you need an accountability buddy, if you need to write a contract to yourself, whatever it is, but there has to be this commitment to action and to do that action with consistency. And then next comes the fun part, the exploration, the trying new things. I cut my hair different lengths. I played around with fashion. I decided to explore what my values were and observe the spaces in which I felt at ease and at peace, and the different processes, whether it was my morning routine or my night routine, that helped me feel a little bit more stable and comfortable in my skin. And then after that exploration came a moment of reflection. I journal often, I stretch, I spend some time in silence, and this helped to solidify the choices I was making. And then the last thing is to decide with clarity what that next step is going to be. And after you decide what your next step is going to be, I heard it might have been Seth Godin say it, but um, if it's working, keep doing it. And so once you gain this clarity on, hey, I find it easier if I wake up at this time and I spend a little time to myself and prepare myself to go out into the world, I'm just going to keep building that practice. This practice is the same practice I use when I'm working with design. It's the same practice that has took me on a journey of signing my first $500 contract. And then it helped me sign my first $5,000 contract. And then my next 5-figure contract. And now I'm working with nonprofits with budgets in the millions. And I use this practice and this formula of forward growth even today. This is a collection of poetry that I wrote and covers I designed that chart this journey of this process of looking at myself, understanding my values, and trying to move in a method of maturity. Because I think I design in order to articulate understanding. And the intentionality around my decisions creates a mature version of myself. At this point in our history, it should be possible for an individual to build a self that is not simply the outcome of biological drives and cultural habits, but a conscious personal creation. And I just love that line, conscious personal creation. So if you don't remember the 5 steps, that's okay. It's really 3 things that I'm doing, that I do for my clients, that I do in all the work that I do for myself. It's observing where I am, observing the exchange of my time and energy, empathizing with what a possible better experience is, trying to define this idea of better, and then making conscious decisions to design solutions forward. And this, to me, represents the process of a mature, creative, and spiritual person. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know that design shows up in so many different areas of life, and so seeing your methodology is really a true reminder of that. And want to just open it up for questions, comments.
Yeah,
I'll be monitoring the chat, but anything you would like to share, folks, with Gabriel?
I love a good question.
I see that Dr. P says, loves the mention of accountability buddy. Sometimes we need that external force of reinforcement to support growth. So I think that is extremely powerful.
Absolutely.
How do you find yourself time to like get out of the day to day? I am a minutia person. My instinct is to fall into the details and live there, which makes it hard sometimes both at work and in my personal life to like lift up, be above that and think more strategically in directionality. How have you managed to make some of that happen for yourself?
How did I find the space and time? I love this concept of finding the space and time. I love this idea of creating space to grow and space to thrive. So a lot of it was small choices that I made, but that had big impacts. So some of these were stretching for 5 minutes. I was like, if I can't have 5 extra minutes in my day, I'm doing something wrong. If I can't pull 5 minutes away, like when you really think about 5 minutes, if you're jam packed that way, I'm like, where can I, plus and minuses. I'm a big video gamer, so I love the idea of maximizing my build and taking away certain points and adding certain points. So some of the things I did that were really big were I realized that I struggled to work on my lap, so I had to buy a good desk. And when I bought a good desk, I started to see my productivity go up, and then I was able to get back some time. I'm currently sitting on a kneeling chair right now, and I love it. And it helped me fall into my work. And that was something else I did. I also bought slippers. It made it so that when I woke up in the morning and I stuck my feet in some comfy slippers, it changed my whole mood throughout the day. It provided me with the ability to just like relax into the day, and that gave me back some of that time and energy. And then I just invested those moments into, all right, I got a little bit more energy here today. Where can I put this in terms of my growth?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben, I see that you raised your hand.
That was great, Gabriel. Also, I did chuckle at min-maxing your
Yeah.
life, like you'd min-max like your cleric or whatever. Like that's a great analogy. Um, no, I actually don't even have a question. That was just a comment. I found myself recently in this situation where this January, I had to buy a bite guard from my dentist because guess who for although I was fine, I guess the first 34 years started grinding his teeth really badly in the middle of the night. And I was, so I actually, not only did I do like the practical medical things like go to the dentist, but also I started Tai Chi the last couple weeks in a way to like carve out that extra hour for the class and then a couple minutes every day to like find that and like make that space to help my brain and body. So it just resonated because I like literally just the spring like was like figuring out how to do that. And if there's not obviously all Ithacans here except for you, Gabriel, but Nigel is actually my teacher for Tai Chi. He teaches at a local school. So anyway.
I am very intrigued with the process of Tai Chi, something I'm looking into. I have a process of somatic dance that I also just really, really enjoy. And I mean, it's just me on a Tuesday dancing around in my living room. Instead of watching TV, I just turn on some music. And I'm a big believer that the body knows. You feel tension. There's a feeling of uncomfortability. Walking into a room, you can kind of sense something off is off, or listening to that inner voice was really important to me. And the more I focused on the stretching and the writing and the journaling and the min maxing, the more I could hear that internal voice. I saw another question. What was it?
Yes, it is. How do you find the motivation initiative to commit once you recognize something you'd like to change? There's so many things, there's so many things in my own life that I see as ideals, but I'm almost paralyzed by the sheer amount of things I've identified.
Yeah. Um, my brain works in cycles and patterns. I'm really good at seeing a little pattern there. Um, and it became a goal of trying to associate as many as I could. For example, I think everything is design. You know, I think that how I live my life is design, the work I do is design. So I'm trying to make as many patterns and associations. But then there is a level of priority. And I think that number one priority should be you and your wellness. And so to focus on the things that are have a direct impact on your well-being first. I like the idea of uh, how do I create sanctuary in every room of my house? So if I am in the kitchen and all of a sudden I can't find something and I get a little frustrated because I can't find it, I make sure to like readdress the system right then. So it's the quick pivot that also really helps me start to pick up the speed and find the time to kind of do that big list of things. And then eventually I'm taking that list, putting it into different buckets, and recognizing that there's a tension point that I can focus on, and it relieves 3 or 4 of those issues. Um, but yeah, it's a method of I use a program called Milanote. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Um, I don't like Notion; it's too linear for me. Milanote lets me put everything everywhere and then pull in links and photos and all of this stuff. So I'm currently in the process of building a cinematic universe that we got copyrighted. That's to be a video game, and maybe next Fresh Friday I'll talk about that. But I use Milanote, and it helps me organize my thoughts.
Yes, also included a note to a message to the link to Milanote in the chat for folks if you want to further explore the tool. And then Nichelle, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm curious because, as with design, we're also familiar with the soft skill of empathy or having empathy. And in your journey, I'm sure there's many instances for you to get to this place where you are now where you had to have empathy with yourself because it's not like kind of a linear journey. So can you speak to any time where you felt like you've had to have heavy empathy for yourself and then pick yourself back up and move forward?
Absolutely. The practice of empathy is a daily. I'll say, so when I first got into daily stretching, at first I tried to get into yoga and meditation. It was really, really difficult. I could not sit still and think for 5 minutes, but um, I like the discipline. If I'm going to decide to do something, I'll try to do it for 30 days. Um, I know Nat did a 365 design project. I did 7 days. That was enough for me. And but what it does, that consistency, is starts to help me like hear myself. So I was gotten into stretching and meditation, and I had made a decision that if I walked past the mirror and I said something not nice to myself, that I would stop and look myself in the eye and say something nice to myself. And this was happening almost subconsciously, that I would, because I grew up for years, like 20 years, not being nice to myself. So I walked past the mirror one day and I said something to myself. And it was one of the first times that I heard myself say it. And I was like, why did I just say that? Stop, pause. Let's have some empathy right now. This exchange could be different. How do I treat myself as a best friend? So that was just one of the moments where I literally saw myself in the mirror and said, we need to stop and speak a little bit nicer. But I do this through writing as well. I journal very openly. A lot of the poetry that is on my website is it's poetic, but it's almost like a journal entry. And so it's just me having conversations with myself, trying to figure out, how do I be lighter?
Yeah, that's amazing. Self-talk is very important because subconsciously our brains don't know the difference when we start talking negatively to ourselves, and keeping that in the forefront when you're stopping yourself when you catch yourself is,
Mhm.
is a daily thing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I have found that patience, that stopping, uh, which is so hard. I've worked for a lot of nonprofits, and almost none of them have ever paused to reflect, to address the systems that they're using to say if they're working for them, until someone comes in there and they're like, hey, this is not sustainable for me. And then you have to advocate for yourself, because you start to realize, oh, I'm up against a lot of people who are doing things the way that it's always been done. But again, we're creative, so we can think of new possibilities. Um, I currently live in an apartment that faces a giant tree. And in this process of stopping, I have watched this tree bloom and die for seasons. And that has taught me a lot about empathy.
And we have, oh, Deb, go ahead.
Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion and you sharing yourself like this. And what I'm getting in just big old boxcar letters is that your frame of reference to your world is creative. And that is so beautiful. And that is such a gift. I think that there are a lot of people that don't share that gift. So how do we speak to them and share your processes and procedures and successes for getting you where you are and possibilities around where they could be for a population of folks who may not acknowledge or even realize they have a creative piece or absolutely believe they don't have a creative piece.
Mm-hmm. I believe everyone's creative. Like I love the I have a friend who she does business operations for nonprofits, and she's so good at it. She has her own systems and ways that she does things. And I'm like, that's creative. You decided to look at a process and say, how can I use this to help other people? And for me, I think being an example is something I really struggle with, showing up in the alopecia community for so long. There's a big community on Instagram now. A lot of them all talk about like living your, in a free state of being where you can have your wig off or your beanie off or whatever it is. And it was really hard for me to own that, but I had to start to see examples of that, and examples of that in a way that resonated with me. I'm not going to stand in front of my Instagram and like dance for everyone, but I might write a story or draw a photo, or writing shows up in different ways where I use my creativity, and then that's shared. But I had to spend a lot of seasons learning about myself and what was an authentic expression for me that felt right. Um, and there's no real answer. Eventually you just take this leap of faith, but it, like there's no feeling of that tension when it comes to sharing yourself. So hopefully we can continue to share. And thank you, Natalie, for putting me on to this fresh talk. But Natalia, yeah, it's the more we can share our stories and share other people's stories, I think we'll hit that level of openness that the world needs.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Gabriel. Couldn't agree more. Also, I guess the final comment before we hop, Dr. P said, it is amazing how much more creative some of us become through the process of stress and burnout. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yes.
So,
Grief is a great teacher.
mhm. Yes, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending today's Fresh Friday. As you know, this is a monthly series that really focuses on outside inspiration and this creative discussion like we've had today. If folks want to ever give their own talk or sign up, just reach out to me and we'll make it happen. So, everyone, have a lovely rest of your Friday, holiday weekend, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Come to the New York office.
You know
Make
I will.
it happen.
Better get over
Uh,
here.
That sounds amazing.
I'm in the spaceship, man. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Thank you so much. And I just quickly, I know you got to go. I got to go too. But that I look for a creative stream to step into and stay in. That's when I'm the happiest. I can be alone there. I can be in community with other creatives. But it is the aspiration and the want of my life to live there 24/7.
Yeah, I understand that so much.
I know you do. Well, thank you. I'm going to go, but just thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Come
Yeah.
on. Come
Bye.
on.